Okay.
Are we good?
Yes, we're good to go.
Okay. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our 10-part series, Find and Own Your Uniqueness. Today, Chico Matenda and myself are going to discuss part 2, which is finding purpose during difficult times. So let me start by asking you a question. What do you believe your true life purpose is? Here's one thing. Nobody likes to be pushed. Yet somehow life finds its own ways to push us to change. And of course, we're going to resist. We're going to find it hard. We're going to find it painful because it wasn't chosen. Yet there is something to be found in the popular say of there's always a blessing in disguise. This disguise is the hindsight, and the blessing will be found at some point throughout this marathon that is our lives. So today, Chico and I are going to discuss how we ourselves found our own life purpose through some challenges and tribulation. And first of all, Chico, if we can start talking about how we from ourselves have found where transformation happens.
Okay, yes. So we are going to be giving you examples just in terms of how finding our true meaning in terms of purpose transferred in our career and also in entrepreneurship experiences as well. But initially wanted to start off with just giving you examples of what may resonate with you in how your true life purpose may show up. And one of the things that came up to mind for Maida and myself was about how transformation can happen in suffering as well as in pleasure. So part of that can also be influenced by a collective group, or in the current circumstance, we'll say the pandemic, where we all on some level have experienced something that has resonated with us because it's impacted us to flip our world, or what we understand as our true meaning, upside down. Okay, so we're confronted by something else that's different. So on that level, that can be described as something that is suffering. So Maida, what would you describe as something that is of pleasure when it comes to like transformation and finding meaning or purpose?
Absolutely. So let me redefine pleasure because we all have a different definition. But pleasure is something that is beneficial for us. So it might not be pleasure as in fun, haha, but pleasure as in I am victorious. I went through that and I learned so much. I learned so much about myself. I learned so much about my process. And now that I am on the other side of that tunnel, I understand myself. I understand how I react. I understand how I self-sabotage. I also understand how I can make good of the things that I have been going through. And Chico, at some point in this discussion, we will talk about our own life experiences and how from what we learned about ourselves during these difficult times is now what we are applying in our respective businesses as well. And this is the pleasure, is that we don't need to reinvent the wheel and go back through the same kind of difficult time every time just to discover, oh, well, I know how to do that.
Definitely. That's a good description. And as you were describing pleasure, I was also thinking about nature. And I've heard a lot of people through the pandemic or the lockdown period, and in the US and other places, it's called quarantine.
Yes.
People describe how they've reconnected with nature and found pleasure in that. So through pain and pleasure and through connecting with nature, then there's that resonance of connecting with something that could then be purposeful, a purposeful activity.
Yes.
Okay, so that
yes, sorry. Yes, and I was going just to add, because it came to mind, is you're connecting with something that is greater than you. And this could be your intuition. This could be nature. This could be life, just enjoying life little pleasures, because at the end of the day, life can be very short. You know, we discussed this a lot during the series, is that we are so caught up in our businesses and making money and succeeding and all of these outside type of validation that we sometimes forget that our own purpose might well be reconnecting with our true essence. And that's why these difficult times come to us, is to show us, is to make us pause for a second and ask ourselves, what am I missing right now? What am I really here to do? And it's not necessarily an action as in money making action, right? And it's not necessarily about saving the world. That's, you know, that's a bit of a tall order. It could be something that is closer to home as well.
Definitely. And you've hit the nail on the head. Basically, what is closer to home better than ourselves? Okay, because we constantly, when I say we, it's the royal we, is that searching for something that is external. So the external influences can be like a career, can be social media, can be political factors. And while trying to find all of that, you're working with yourself, and that purpose is already there. It's intuitive and it's within. Yeah.
Yes, and going back to all of that, is that's part of the pleasure as well, because it's within equal, it's within our control. The suffering comes from all these things that we really, really, really want to make happen, but they are all outside of our control. They are all outcomes. We have no idea. When we reconnect with our true self, then this is where things start to be a bit more flowy. We dance with life. We go with the intuition. We kind of relax and chill around, you know, the social status in a way that we're looking for.
Definitely. So that's connecting to showing up as your authentic self, and the suffering can also be being driven by external factors where you can become like frustrated because you may not, you're searching like in workplaces, what is my purpose? What is my meaning? Trying too much to focus on that more than intuitively following what's closer to home, like you mentioned before. And this leads us nicely into our shared experiences, where we can just probably share our given experiences. And for me, coming from like a psychotherapy background, existential crisis it's where my life basically has stemmed from, even pre-career life, about initially. And what we're going to do in this series, actually, before I just skip on to, we're going to be very intuitive and talk about what comes to heart and mind. So the first thing that popped up for me was when I was suffering from a mental health condition. That was my experience of connecting with my existential crisis, although I didn't define it as that, but I was experiencing like anxiety, what's labeled as anxiety and panic disorder. And through that, I was also trying to find meaning and purpose. That is the first time going back, I can think of when I actually started to question, what is my purpose in life on a personal level? Before I even went into like a career. And that's what motivated me to actually coincidentally, or not coincidentally, study psychotherapy because I wanted to help other people who had gone through similar experiences, you know, of feeling lost and their world not making sense as the experiences that I'd experienced before. And so that's on a personal level. But what about you, Maida? What can you relate to in terms of like on a personal level?
I'm going to tell you one thing, Chico. I think listening to you, I was laughing internally, not for your story, but more in on my own account, is that I had probably an existential crisis. I call that my midlife crisis, since I was 3 years old.
Wow.
And for me, since I'm 3 years old, I have always been asking myself, why am I here on earth exactly? What am I here to do? Why? like you, there were several defining points, but for me, really, one of the common thread is finding freedom in very unusual and unexpected places. For me, it was living in Syria, which is not a place of great freedom, but being in a family that was open-minded, where there was a freedom of speech that allowed me to grow on an intellectual level and to develop intellectual curiosity. As in, you don't take anything that other people say as the truth. Do your due diligence, be curious, understand others, put yourself in other people's shoes before going into judgment. It was for me, growing up as well in France, in a very difficult, kind of restrictive environment. That was one of the Catholic schools where I was. And again, it was heavily structured, heavily ruled, heavily regimented. For me as well, I found my freedom there, but a freedom as in I follow my intuition. I go into the imagination. It became a kind of escape, but that was a good escape as well, because it was a difficult time. And going to more recently, it was my corporate job as well. Working in investment banking is not as a free canon type of things that many people see, because in the news they're going to show you the problem. But most of these places are heavily structured, a lot of compliance. And for me, it was finding also my freedom in these places where I was able to be my own self. And sometimes I'm a bit NPC, not sometimes, and most times I just speak up my mind. And being in these places and finding the people that can understand that sometimes I can swear, I can curse, but that was my purpose. And for me today, it translates into what I'm working with my clients as well, and for you as well. Is, you know, for me, I work with people who are in these corporate jobs and they feel that they are in a golden cage. And you know what? Golden cages are meant to be pried open, and the bird can explore outside or go inside, knowing that you are whole and that you are supported, and you have the most important thing in life, which is your own respect for self, your own sense of self as well.
Definitely. And I think that's where we also like resonate, just being in full-time careers previously and in the corporate sector. And similar journey where I was an wanting to be an entrepreneur because of like being creative and trying to find purpose and meaning within the workplace. And I think the key message here is also about connecting. Before we even hopped on this session, I was thinking about even I've heard people say they're in a job that they dislike. But I think there's also something about why you're in that job. It's about finding purpose and meaning within that, and then making a plan of how you move beyond it.
Yeah, it's about the choices,
yes,
right? Yeah,
definitely. So we can go probably, this will lead nicely into just giving like examples about, let's say if somebody was there and they're scratching their head and they're thinking about, how do I find purpose and meaning in everything that's happening now, or in my career, or in my entrepreneurship venture? What are the types of things that I would need to do to start off with to help?
Yeah. So I'm going to start with what we discussed earlier. Start with your own life. We all have our own hero's journey, and actually we have a lot of different hero's journeys, but we have the benefit of having a brain that works and that is open. If you're listening to us, it's precisely because you are open to different points of views, to different cultures, and to different ways of seeing lives and perspective. So start by owning your own life, look at your hero's journey, and in hindsight, see what each of your challenges brought you and taught you. Now, again, it's not about going into the denial of the journey, right? It's hard. We all have gone through different kinds of losses, and there is no loss that is bigger than other in the individual life. Each of them came with its load of challenges, difficulties, sorrows, but also pleasure in the learning and the pleasure in the hindsight. So for me, start with your own hero's journey. You have the benefit of hindsight. Take a step back and just ask yourself what, not why, but what each of your challenges brought you and taught you. And from there, you can start extending this at your work challenges or the work that you're doing right now, your qualities, your skills, and your relationships.
Definitely. And when you ended off with relationships, I was just thinking about the relationships as well. That relationships can also be beneficial. Not all, but it's also good to pay close attention to the relationships which are nurturing and supportive of noticing your true life purpose. So things that you do instinctively or intuitively, and they're childlike, things that make you happy, things that make life easier for you. These are the things that other people notice. So when you receive that feedback, I used to be like this. I used to like brush it off. I'd be like, oh, no, but you, but you first, and ignore what people recognize in me. So it's about thanking and banking those moments and appreciating that somebody is seeing a light that you're exuding and paying attention to that. Journaling. I started off like journaling and then blogging for over 10 years ago. And believe it or not, it's called an existential crisis blog. I was just journaling my thoughts, and it wasn't for anybody, but for my personal journey to start off with. And that can also offer you the opportunity as well to recognize your experiences. Okay, so what comes up to me, the experiences are beyond immediate needs, beyond financial needs, and it's more about what makes you happier and more fulfilled in life. Then making a plan around that, but not being too caught up in, I've got to do it now. I've got to achieve it now because there are these expectations from me, from the external people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
It's being more realistic.
It's also being going into the self-care part, is that as soon as we start defining ourselves by what we think other people want from us, then we are going further from finding our purpose and meaning, because all of a sudden this purpose and meaning are tied up to other people's belief system. And what we want is to break free from the collective belief system. You know, that belief system that says no pain, no gain?
Yes.
That we need to really stop that. There will be efforts, there will be hard work, but the hard work will be the strive inside of each of us to be tomorrow a better version of ourselves. And that's why you journal. That's why, as you said, Chico, several times during all our discussions, reframe your self-talk. Be very careful how you talk to yourself. Be very careful how you put ideas into your brain that actually are not really even true. They're just a perception. So take a step back. There's another thing that we discussed as well, Chico, that I really liked, is this idea of operating from the inside out,
yes,
rather than from the outside in. And I know that one of the things that you cherish a lot is this idea of giving more than you take as well.
Definitely. I truly believe in that. And I think the type of society or generation we're living in, regardless of when you were born, there's this sense of urgency, immediacy, and especially when you're like transitioning, going from like a career, becoming like an entrepreneur, of the take factor, take, rather than give. So I think the people who end up being more fulfilled are the people who start off with coming from a place of giving, from offering something. So it might not even just be entrepreneurship, but it's about in your personal journey, what is the grander picture beyond immediate needs and also beyond family, believe it or not. It's about, are you connected to charitable causes, to volunteering, to mentoring? And through that, most people will find, and Maida and I probably can resonate on this as well, is that you find some form of peace, some form of like happiness. It makes you feel happier when you give to somebody else. And often when you're coming from a place of take, you can also perceive it as though you're failing because people see it. Okay, so you attract like for like. Does that
absolutely
make sense?
Oh, like, oh, wow. It's when you were saying this, what came up as well is when you take, you're telling yourself, I'm not enough. So you're taking because there's always something missing that you feel that you need to fulfill via something external. You know, the magic pill that we talk a lot, like, let me do this course, let me blah, blah. Sometimes you need to take the course, but when you need to take this course or work with a therapist or a coach or what have you, or mentor, it's not because you don't have something, it's because you want to learn something new. And for a greater purpose, it comes more from wanting something rather than a feeling of lack. So I would say that, and maybe to conclude our discussion today, is living a full life, living a fulfilled life, start by examining as well all these places where we feel we are not enough, where we feel we are lacking something, and we're going on the outside to try to find it. Whereas in reality, the answer is just here. It's literally behind our eyes. It's literally our intuition. It's literally this drive that gets us out of bed every morning, where we don't go, oh, I need to get out of bed because I'm going to lose my job. That can be a drive, but it's more, I'm going to get out of bed today because I'm doing something that excites me as well, or that I'm going to learn something new that is good for me.
Yeah, so in the form of laws of attraction, you're first of all attracting that I'm coming from a place that is already grateful for what I already have. Yeah, so from a place of gratitude, from a place of like fulfillment, not from a place of like urgency, although there is urgent matters, but the likelihood is that you will attract like for like energy in terms of that, and opportunities will become much easier. So we'll end it off. I think Maida, even before we hopped on here, she said something about living your best life. And living your best life basically is also about taking accountability as you're living your best life, right?
Yes, it's be responsible for yourself first, for your own path, for your own life, and then we can worry about the outside.
Definitely. So as part of like this series, I hope you have actually connected and resonated with some of the things that we've spoken about. And if you've got any specific questions, do feel free to also ask us any questions, or to share with something that has resonated with you, something that you've taken away. And in the terms of like key takeaways, we will also be providing useful resources as part of this series, and for anybody who's also joined to be part of our community. And we'll always provide links as to where you can find that information. Okay, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Maida.